Good morning. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, June the 4th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declaration of interest. Seeing none, I will move to community announcements. And I'm wondering if I maybe would start on my left today. Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Not much for me this week other than I do want to announce that on June the 8th, which is this Saturday, our car show group has let me know that the Ontario Hot Rod Tour will be stopping in this Saturday night. Approximately 6 p.m. and they're expecting somewhere around 50 vehicles with that group alone. So I'll certainly be there to welcome, and I know that they had mentioned to pass that along to you too, Madam Mayor, if you were available. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Along with Councillor Crone, we attended the 100th birthday party for Althea Morton, and there was many people there, and she was certainly recognized by all levels of the government from the number of plaques that she received, which was very nice, and I think she was taken back with all of the attention that she was getting, but she was very quiet at times, and so I'm going to take a feather out of Tara's book and give a couple that are moving forward, and that's the 100th anniversary of the Sharon Temple, which is on Thursday, and the celebration for that, and we certainly do have a lot of park openings coming forward. And the Raise the Roof dog party is on June the 15th, so that we can go and see all the little animals there. So, and I just wanted to, at this time, Madam Mayor, take the opportunity to thank staff that were in attendance at Sports Day and all the information that they brought out for the residents. So I'm hoping that everyone will remember as we move forward and attend all the functions and the new buildings that we have going forward. And the appearance of the fire truck, Mr. Chief, was certainly liked by all of the kids. They may have their fingerprints all over it, but they certainly climbed it a lot.
Councillor Persechini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's good to be back after a few weeks of holidays. I just want to take a moment to extend the thanks of the ones that went on the radio, like yourself and Mark Welchek, and also my general manager. And it was great. I did a live opening from California, and I did a closing from California. And I thank Aaron and all the team that went out there. And I also want to thank the ones who sponsor me or are going to still sponsor the run or donate, or who have donated, whatever. It's much appreciated. And I saw Monica running there from the library. She came right there. Good. She hasn't, I don't think she missed many of those events. She said I think she was a young 17-year-old that she used to participate. So I want to thank everyone involved. And it's nice to get back into the game again. Again, thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll start my remarks with the fact that it is our first meeting of the month, and therefore we usually review one of the character attributes from around our banners in the room. This month's character attribute is honesty. I will be sincere, trustworthy, and truthful. When I work with honesty, I will be truthful in what I say and what I choose not to say, be sincere in my interactions with others, ensure that all my actions and activities are free from fraud, deceit, and misrepresentation. And some practical suggestions are to always tell the truth at all times in a caring and kind manner, admit and take responsibility for mistakes, not take credit for something that is not ours. And Mark Twain said, I thought this was cute, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And for me, I also found a quote that truth never damages a cause that is just, and that is from Mahatma Gandhi. So from that, I will move into a couple of things. A bit of sad news, actually. On Sunday, a very key member of our Santa Claus Parade Committee passed away, and he played a very, very special role. and touched the hearts of many of our members of our community, and we're deeply saddened at this loss, and I want to express our condolences to his family and friends at this difficult time. He was on our committee, he's served our community since 2012, so it was quite some time. Moving on into upcoming events, the Sharon Temple Heritage Celebration is the Temple's largest annual fundraiser that's happening this Thursday at 6 p.m. Our Sharon Queensville Community Committee is having its inaugural meeting this Wednesday, so we hopefully will have Councillor Persechini and I will have some things to report out of there. This Saturday, in addition to the Hot Rod Tour, is also the Friends of the East Gwillimbury Library's Shabby Chic sale at the Temperance Hall. That is from 8 until 1 o'clock, and always some really interesting and fun finds to be had there. On Wednesday, the 12th, the Conservation Authorities Foundation Dinner is also, that's their major fundraiser, is also taking place. It's at the Manor at Carrying Place, and I think that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was certainly a busy time since we last met. I participated in the Alzheimer's Walk for Memories up in the Briars in Georgina for the Alzheimer's Society of York Region, and we raised $25,000. So we're pretty happy about that. And as Councillor Morton already said, we both attended Althea Mortson's 100th birthday, and it's amazing the amount of people that'll show up when you turn 100, so I hope to make it. As well, we had the Chamber of Commerce AGM, and we had very good attendance there. Sports Day this past weekend was another roaring success, so congratulations to all the volunteers, and especially Councillor Morton, who's been intimately involved. It's always a nice event where the community comes together. Of course, we have had the opening of the Farmers Market, 10th year, so that's exceptional. I attended a $1 Million Smiles charity event where we build a playground equipment for a child that's in need of, they might have a medical condition, could be chronic or terminal. It's a great charity. You'll hear more about them in the months ahead. As well, I'll put another plug in. We have June 19th, the Strawberry Supper at North Union Hall. So I am taking ticket requests. Please get them into me as soon as you can. And lastly, I'd just like to those that celebrate, wish everyone a happy Eid Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Farmers Market opening is always great news in my house. I have 2 rabbits, and nothing's better than the lettuce from the Farmers Market. They look forward to it. Also, this past week, we had the Park Avenue Public School Spring Fling. The weather was absolutely beautiful. The turnout was amazing, and congratulations to that school for putting that on every year. It's a huge success. I also want to say Happy Pride Month. It's a month of celebration and also a time of remembrance and support for our members of the LGBTQ community and allies alike. And to celebrate, the town will be raising the Pride flag on June 11th at 9:15. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much. A couple of items that were not mentioned, and it seems like we were all together for many of them. Congratulations to Caroline Mulrooney, who hosted a seniors information session at the sports complex. It was very well attended by seniors, and there were about 20 booths that were set up from organizations that support seniors in their homes, and you could see a lot of people taking down information, and hopefully we'll take full advantage of these community organizations that make a difference. The launch of the Farmers Market has already been mentioned, but what hasn't been mentioned is that they are still looking for volunteers, and there are vendor places still available. So if you could, you know someone who has time and would like to spend some time on Thursdays to help set up and work as a volunteer, they would love to have you. And the vendor positions, I believe they have about 8 or 10 still available, and many of them, you can come for one day or you can come for the entire season. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly get a hold of the town and we can share that with you. The author reading, that was held a couple weeks ago now. Anakin Schofield, she was a featured author and quite an interesting author. She had a very different way of presenting in this council chamber than others have in the past, and it was very entertaining. I have just returned from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Quebec City, and we'll be doing a formal report probably within a few weeks, but I wanted to let people know that particularly for our elected officials, that next year it is in Toronto. It's going to be at the Toronto Convention Centre. It makes it very difficult when it's a distance away, both for accommodation and for traveling, but this one is going to be close to us. There were over 2,000 delegates this year at FCM, and as usual, I come back and talk about how we may have an issue, but there's many more that do, and there's lots of solutions in front of us, so I will bring the report back at a later date. Coming up, the Sharon Temple was mentioned. There still are tickets available. I think today's the last day for the gala on Thursday evening, and I think that's all. The rest all have been mentioned. We are looking forward to welcoming Rockwood Kitchens to East Gwillimbury. They're going to be at Green Lane and Yonge, and we're going to be cutting a ribbon on Sunday afternoon. That's in the Costco Plaza. On June the 13th, we have the official opening of the Holland Landing Skate and Scooter Zone at the Holland Landing Community Center. That's 5 to 7. I know a lot of young people are already using it. They didn't have to wait till the ribbon cutting, and this is the first of several park openings we're going to be celebrating this summer. And lastly, there has been discussion also about the partner dogs this weekend and Raise the Woof. And it's going to be quite a day with, they call it Beamer's Ultimate Dog Party. Lots to do. Come out, bring along your pet friends and family, and support this wonderful cause. With that, I believe we've covered that area, and I will now move to presentations. I have no presentations listed on my agenda. Mr. Clerk, is that correct?
Correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and we're down to deputations. And would you please introduce our deputant? Not that she needs any introduction, however.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I would like to introduce Susan Boyne-Bird, obviously not needing any introductions to council, along with Aaron Cerenzia. They're both from Neighbourhood Network, making a deputation committee regarding an update on Neighbourhood Network.
Welcome, ladies. Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. Is that okay for you there, Susan? Yep. Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council. And of course, I'm the one who does need an introduction because Susan is such an incredible volunteer that she is so well known in the community. My name is Erin Cerenzia, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the manager of Magna's Neighbourhood Network office.
Good morning, Mayor Hackson and members of council. We're so pleased to be here this morning to give you a brief update on Neighbourhood Network and maybe even to familiarize some of the newer members of council as to what we're all about. We hope to continue on to help make East Gwillimbury an even better community to live in.
So Magna's Neighbourhood Network office has actually been in operation since 2008, and the concept really was this simple idea. Let's create a network by linking volunteers, able and willing residents in the community who we know have a desire to help with organizations and causes that they might not know exist. So that was really the foundation of Neighbourhood Network. We are a department of Magna International, and I like to say that anything you see that Magna is doing to give back here at a local level in York Region is facilitated by our small but mighty team, including the Magna Hoedown, which many don't realize is run from our office. For us, community engagement always stems from volunteerism. So we've developed a very dynamic and robust website on the screen. That's just the homepage of our website. I encourage you to check it out. And this website allows volunteers to really peruse different opportunities and find opportunities that match their interests. And the goal is to create meaningful volunteer opportunities for these individuals and encourage lifelong volunteerism. The website also has an area where we promote community events. So of course there are many great events mentioned by our members of council, the Hot Rod Show, the Sharon Temple opening. All of these things can go onto our calendar and be promoted through Neighbourhood Network. We also run volunteer programs every year. Our spring tree planting, we had many members of council out this past April. Our annual Give Back Award scholarship program for graduating students where we celebrate their volunteer efforts. And we play an active role as the go-to volunteer resources for all of the high schools in the York Region area. And when Neighbourhood Network began, I mentioned it was 2008, but 2012 is the year that we're particularly interested in because that's when we formalized our partnership with the town of East Gwillimbury. We then expanded in 2013 to Georgina, and finally in 2015 to King Township. So we're really in the northern 5 of the northern 6 York Region municipalities.
As you can see on your screen, today Neighbourhood Network engages with over 14,000 volunteers. Now, 50 to 60% of those are high school students who are looking to get their 40 hours of community service. The rest is made up of young adults, adults, and seniors. Now, if you take a look at the breakdown of the municipalities on your screen, you'll see that East Gwillimbury represents about 6% of those volunteers. But we know East Gwillimbury is growing exponentially. Not only will the community continue to grow, but I suspect those volunteer numbers will also grow. And eventually, we hope to have our own high school, which will contribute considerably as well.
And the statistics are quite similar for our 417 registered partners. These are charities, nonprofits, and community groups who provide their services and programs in York Region, with 6% being based in East Gwillimbury. And of course, we know there are many community groups, Big Brothers Big Sisters, for example, or Chats, who do provide their programs and services here, but their physical office is in either Aurora or Newmarket. So for me, that number is a little bit skewed, again, because their headquarters are not here in East Gwillimbury, but they are captured in that total number of partners. And of course, through Aaron and his team and the work that we've been doing with the Health and Active Living Plaza, we know that these organizations will soon have a home in East Gwillimbury, and it also will give Neighbourhood Network a physical presence here as well, which is great. And all of that said, we really are a free resource that's here for you as members of council and for your community. And so the purpose of today was to update you, bring you up to speed on who we are, what we do, and to remind you that we're here to help in your community.
You can find us on a special page on the town's website under Community Involvement. We would like you to know also that we're in full support and will collaborate with the town staff on the Engaged Volunteer Program. We're also proud of the fact that we helped to reinstitute the annual East Gwillimbury Volunteer Recognition Event, which happened about 4 years ago now.
And finally, as part of our new strategic direction, we want to continue engaging with all of the new East Gwillimbury residents as much as possible. Whether it's hosting another community barbecue like the one we did last summer in the park beside Phoebe Gilman's school, whether it's coordinating volunteer fairs for your residents, having booths at the many town-run events, or any other ideas that you might have that fall in between there. We really do look forward to working with you and continuing to build better communities together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a large presence in our community, sometimes very quiet to behind the scenes, but you certainly do make a difference for East Gwillimbury. We want to thank you and Magna for all that they put into East Gwillimbury. I think it made a tremendous difference in, I think it was 2012, when Susan Boyne was named as the ambassador for our area for East Gwillimbury, and Susan does a tremendous job in promoting East Gwillimbury. I know every time we hear about Neighbourhood Network, Susan's there waving our flag. So thank you, both of you, very, very much. Are there any questions from members of committee? Not seeing any. When I see
did
the
our job well.
you did a great job. When I see the percentages of organizations and the percentages of people, I look across the table here to our the 7 of us, and I see a little challenge that perhaps we can raise that percentage for another year and see, yes, we have new people coming in. We also have a lot of people who are retiring in East Gwillimbury, and they certainly have opportunity time to participate as well. So I'll throw that little challenge out to all of us to see if we can change those numbers a little bit for the next time you come in front of us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for your
much.
time.
A motion to receive. Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Mr. Clerk, I do not have any other deputations listed at this time. Is that correct?
Correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And we are on item F, and that is administration with myself in the chair. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Welcome back from your FCM conference. Just wanted to provide 2 verbal updates today on some good news that happened actually late last week, and I thought they were relevant and timely to bring to Council's information. So firstly, I would ask Aaron Karmazin, our General Manager of Community Parks, Recreation and Culture, who looks after our facilities mandate, to show Council just a little bit about what's happening to the east of us with the office annex proposal. And I think that the old country time, while it served the community well, had become a bit of an eyesore, to say the least. And we were fortunate; some builders were able to use it to market their sales for their first phases of growth, and they actually did a pretty nice job of outfitting it. And it was with staff creatively took a look at it and arranged a lease that Council approved. And I thought that General Manager Karmazin could show what we have now functioning and open as of today.
Thank you, Tom. Through you, Madam Mayor. Staff had been doing some prep work at the facility at 19003 over the past month. From the outside in, that includes some streetscape work, some softscaping, some planting material outside the building, some minor hardscaping and surface treatments to the facility as well to promote visibility and accessibility. So we performed the work to the exterior of the facility. Upon the interior of the facility, we did a complete fit up for support for 16 of our staff members. Those staff members are primarily in the Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Department and the Building Department to be a one-stop shop, if you will, for building inspection and CIS engineering work. So you can see a complete fit up of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment within the facility. It is a very bright and open space. We did have to install some surface treatment to the glazing due to the western exposure and the sun coming into the facility and the solar gain within the facility to filter out some of that direct sunlight for the staff. We elected to do that to make the workspace comfortable for the staff, and again, it is very bright, usable space. And there's a few photos of the interior of the facility as well. It is collaborative space, so with open bullpen areas as well as some plans reviews tables that are in the open for consultation with the public that we welcome into the facility.
Thank you very much. Look forward to heading over there. Questions from members of committee? I have one. Just wondering, now we have 2 places where we have staff that the public would come to visit. And how are we going to message to the public that they're going to be in the right place at the first time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will be working with communications on a comprehensive campaign, if you will, to push information out to the public through our regular channels, through the East Gwillimbury Express website and social media, and to ensure that people are aware that the Annex is east of Leslie Street and the Civic Centre is in fact west of Leslie Street.
Thank you very much. Councillor Persechini.
Just a question, General Manager Cumberson. What they're going to be using the empty areas? What are we going to use that area, since we're moving these people over on the other side? What's going to be used that area so it occupies what for our interest only? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the 16 staff members that will be going over to the Annex, that creates some capacity on the first floor here for requirements and expanding and intensifying those workstations and workspaces. Presently, we support approximately 100 staff, both full-time, part-time, and seasonal out of this facility. This would add greater capacity for this facility as well, with rearranging some of the workstations amongst the planning department as well as the CIS and CPRC.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Further to the mayor's question, when would a member of the public need to go to the Annex, like without an appointment? I can see that people setting up appointments there, but what sort of services are we providing at the Annex that might be someone's first stop?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can provide 2 examples. An example of someone seeking consultation with a building inspector. So they may have a question for some of our building inspection staff that they may attend the Annex for. And as well on the engineering side, if they have a question with regards to linear infrastructure, roads, water, or sewer engineering works, in particular the development planning engineering works, that would be their one-stop shop to consult with staff.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff. I don't know if you covered this in your last presentation. If so, I've forgotten. Did we ever resolve the challenges that site had with regards to, I'm not sure if they were on sewage or septic or holding tank. Did we ever resolve that satisfactorily?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have staff did perform inspection on the septic system holding tank that is on site, and we have incorporated within the operating and maintenance budget for that facility that was approved by council routine maintenance, which is primarily pump out on a routine maintenance, typically every 4 to 6 weeks of that facility.
Thank you very much. I think it's very exciting. It's an opportunity to serve our public better, and without parking and walking in, we might have even done a drive-through at that site. Thank you very much. I have a motion to receive. Councillor Persechini. All those in favor? And that's carried. The next item we have is an administration verbal update. Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, for many years, York, primarily led by York Region, there was a partnership with Schulich and York University, and for management training, and it had been offered. It had gotten a little stale. Some of the flexibility and costs were starting to creep up. So the human resources areas were tasked with the idea of a development of a new management training module. And this is called YorkLEADS 201. It's York Region, York Regional Police, and all the Confederation of Municipalities that jointly put it together. And it's a hands-on program with that's being very cost-effectively provided, and it just had its flagship training session, of which we had Chris Catania attend. So I thought it would be no better. He just received his certificate of completion just last week on Thursday, and I was fortunate to be in attendance. So I'm going to ask Michelle Collette, our Director of Human Resources, just to provide a very brief overview of what the YorkLEADS program is, and then maybe make a little presentation to Chris as well.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of council. Yes, I am Michelle Collette, Director of HR. Very pleased to be here this morning to have a good news story for you. And as our CEO was mentioning, the YorkLEADS program, the first run through was this year, so we're very pleased to have our seat. There was 25 seats, and we were able to have 1 seat, which we'll have more in the future. This program consists of 12 sessions, and they are delivered in over several months, start in January, and it does address leadership, competencies, culture, and focuses on the leadership challenges that, of course, our folks in their roles could be facing on a day-to-day basis. Participants, they have developed, in our opinion, a stronger understanding of their position, advancing the mission and values of our corporation, well, as our CIO was saying, networking with our N6 partners that include YRP, as well as York Region. So we are very pleased that Chris is our first cohort in this program. We will have future seats, and we do feel this is an example of true collaboration with us and our partners. So very pleased that Chris is our first recipient. So I'll ask Chris to come up, and maybe he has a few words to share about his learnings in the program. And I'll see if there's slides there. So you may want to run through the slides there.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and Council. Just wanted to share my experiences with this program, and as Mr. CAO has indicated as well, it is the first of its kind for this program. It was a great professional development opportunity for myself. There were a lot of different modules that we'd covered since late 2018. One thing that I wanted to mention, though, is that every group as part of this program had to go through a sort of a Dragon's Den type of presentation. So we had to present on some really key hot topic type of issues that are affecting the workplace. So the group that I was a part of tackled the initiative work-life balance. So as you see here, there are really 12 key competencies that we'd covered in the program. And as just previously mentioned, that we were groups of 5. The group that I was a part of tackled the issue or the initiative work-life balance. But as you see there was other different types of Dragon Den type of presentations dealing with inclusiveness in the workplace, change management, and as well psychological safety in the workplace. Part of, let me just turn it back to here. One real important aspect of this presentation, what we learned through all of the different modules, is that we were able to apply or at least bring forward a toolkit. So as a collective, we have all those 5 different presentations. We have toolkits to bring back to each of our respective workplaces to help incorporate with our human resources department. This way, if there isn't any policies in place, there's a way of establishing certain policies or potentially refining those policies. So that'll be something I'll be bringing back to the Director of Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for your time.
Questions? Congratulations, Chris. That's a long program, and I'm sure it was intense. You talk about life-work balance. There was just one more component there for you to balance along the way. So thank you very much for being our first. I'm sure that we will take the opportunity as a growing community and being very trying to be very effective with our staff, that we will be taking the opportunity at each and every chance to try and get more of our staff involved with this. It just makes perfect sense that you can share with other municipalities and be able to have a look at what their challenges are and their opportunities as well, and it makes you a better leader in our community, so congratulations. And with that, were you going to do a presentation? We're good. Okay, very good. Motion to receive. With congratulations, yes. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we are down to, I'm not seeing anything else on administration. Mr. Webster, is there anything else that you have before us today?
Not at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Members of committee, are there any questions, concerns about administration at this time? Seeing none, I will move to item G, and with Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're down on to Emergency and Community Safety Services. Mr. Dawson, Chief Dawson, there's no prepared items on our agenda. Do you have anything to bring forward at this time?
Through the chair and with thanks, two very brief good news story. The first one regarding our annual intake of paid on call. About a third of them have started on the fire trucks, a sprinkling throughout all the stations. So I'm sure the Mount Albert ones will be busy with Windex, Councillor Morton. And in the next few weeks, the remaining of the 18 will be completed their certification and ready to go. So we're fortunate that they hit the ground running. The Fire and Emergency Services Institute that we use, they come in ready to roll on their call. The second item is just in the pipeline now, is a report for next meeting on emergency management, some annual regular compliance requirements, as well as some good initiatives, EG specific, and that will be accompanied with a very brief PowerPoint overview of emergency management. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. It's nice to hear that we have some fresh faces on our paid on call roster, and we look forward to the emergency management report coming shortly. May I have a motion to receive the Chief's verbal, moved by Councillor Morton? All those in favor? And that's carried. Members of committee, anything to raise under this area? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you.
Thank you very much. We're under item H, and that's corporate services with Councillor Morton in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing under corporate services today. Mr. Valchich, do you have any comments you wish to make?
Madam Chair, with permission, I have two brief updates to provide to committee. The first is with respect to a piece of correspondence that was just received earlier today addressed to our mayor, and it is on behalf of the Municipal Information Systems Association of Ontario. MISA is the acronym, and it is congratulating the town as a recipient of the 2019 Excellence in Municipal Systems Award. And that's for the Growth Management and Development Dashboard that was developed through our GIS area and in conjunction with our executive management team. We do have a couple of pictures. I don't know if the clerks can pull up the email, but we have a couple of photos of our GIS coordinator, Carolyn Saxton, receiving the award. And just to put this into perspective, MISA has almost 1,500 members. There's over 120 municipalities across Ontario that have membership, and almost 100 partner associate organizations with membership. And this award is recognized through a panel of municipal representatives. It's essentially a peer recognition award, so we're very proud of this and pleased with the efforts of Carolyn and the entire team. So I thought that was something that was very timely since that just came in today. The second item that I wanted to mention, Madam Chair, is that we are now ready to officially publicly launch the Council Strategic Plan, and we have a process we're pretty excited about to do that. And with your permission, I would just ask our Director of Communications perhaps to say a couple of words, and she can elaborate a little bit on what we're doing.
Well, I know that staff have been working very, very hard on this, and it certainly is coming forward quickly. And I guess, Laura, you're going to say a few words here?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to announce that we're officially launching the strategic plan communication strategy. Yesterday, we kicked off the campaign with a media release, and we've also posted our first post on social media with our strategic plan video, which you'll recall from our previous meetings was one of our processes that we would be communicating with the public. And so we've actually brought the video here today. We can watch together.
Strong, vibrant community look like to you? Is it one that focuses on responsible growth and environmental protection, quality programs and services, building complete communities, and creating a culture of municipal excellence? These are the 4 strategic priorities laid out in the town's new 2019 to 2022 strategic plan that provides the foundation and direction for the current term of council. Each of these priorities was created based on feedback from the community and becomes an important puzzle piece that works together to guide us along the path of creating our town, our future. As we move through this term, we will conduct annual community reports to ensure we're on track and share with you the progress we're making. Learn more at www.eastgwillimbury.ca/stratplan.
Thank you. So if you didn't recognize the voice, that's our Manager of Operations, Chef Megat, speaking in the video. And so far on our Facebook page, we've had over 300 views on the video already, and that was just posted at 4:30 yesterday. We'll be continuing our communication plans with a post each day. So for today, we'll be posting one of the priorities, and moving forward throughout the week, each day we'll post about a different priority just to give it a little bit of a focus as well. And we are also tied this weekend with our launch with staff at the town hall on Thursday. We'll be introducing it to staff initially, and then we'll have some departmental meetings to follow in the coming weeks, which will take the strategic plan and the puzzle pieces and look a little bit more in depth with them at that time. Hard copies were provided in the council office and are going to be delivered to all the facilities today. And as we move through the month of June, you can expect to see the puzzle feature in our Civic Center coming in the coming weeks. We're just finalizing the details on that.
Thank you, Laura. I know that you and your staff have worked very, very hard on this, and please pass along not only my congratulations, but that of council to all of them, because it has been a lot of hard work for you, and you've spent a lot of many hours getting it to where it is today, and you've done an amazing job. Thank you so much. Okay, so we really have nothing else on this, but do members of committee have questions for Mr. Valtich?
Welcome back.
Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to accept this? Councillor Persechini, all in favor of the motion? The motion's carried. I'll now turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item I, and that's Community Parks, Recreation, Culture with Councillor Persechini in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have Parks and Recreation Culture presentation, and Manager Kamasan, I'll pass it over to you for the presentation or update. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Webster.
Mr. Chair, I would like to do a little lead-in, if I may.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
This is a fairly significant project. I think one thing, and I was reviewing the agenda with the mayor, I think we have this presentation, and the report actually is listed 2 items from now, and would probably be mindful to move the report up to be dealt with at the same time. I think, Madam Mayor, if that would be a friendly suggestion from the CAO. When you get to looking at the building of municipal facilities, they don't happen too often. And in the town's history, I take it probably the biggest build in the history of the town is the facility we currently sit in. It was built close to 30 years ago, and it was a significant facility, required a lot of debt to be issued, and it was funded through a number of sources, including property taxes. In this particular case, I just wanted to note 3 or 4 points to lead into the presentation. For the last many, many years, we've had an inadequate facility for our frontline employees. It borders on the cusp of health and safety requirements. It's bolted onto the back of a community center with a barbed wire fence around it in between the arena and the playground to the north of it. And it's something that we've managed to work with our workers and our employees, our valued employees, to keep Band-Aids on it. We've updated the trailers and had situations where we've had toilets freezing and inoperable and stuff that really isn't proper. And the idea of building a new operations center was certainly something as a priority for both council and staff over many years. With respect to this particular project, there's a couple of things that we're very proud of. If you look at us compared to maybe other municipalities, some of the differences of what we've done in this project. We tactfully acquired and strategically acquired the land, 20 acres, many years ago. And I believe the 20 acres were acquired for roughly about $100,000 an acre, so about a $2 million investment, which was sizable. But we're currently told through real estate analysis that it could be 3, 4, 5 times the value now. And a lot of municipalities wait and go out and acquire the land just directly before the build. And so that's a big check mark this project has. Secondly, a lot of times municipalities, when they get into this type of initiative, immediately run into problems with earthworks, soil conditions, and it's a big unknown because you don't know what's under the ground. And in this case, our general manager and the team that surrounds him went to council and suggested we undertake those earthworks and soil to have the site pre-serviced. And again, that was something that was undertaken in a timely manner, came in under budget. And where we sit today, we're about $4 million into a very significant project. Today's presentation and the report looks at awarding the bricks and mortar, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of just under $20 million. And it's a very sizable and strategic decision. So we thought that it would be best to have a presentation by the general manager. And we also have a team of folks, our town lawyer, our other general managers, our procurement manager, and Mr. Valchich's finance team prepared to answer questions today in order to make sure that we can proceed with this project. So I'll pass it over to General Manager Karmazin.
Thank you, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Tom. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank Mayor and Council and the residents of East Gwillimbury today for the opportunity to provide a brief update and overview of the Municipal Operations Center project. My name is Aaron Karmazin. I'm the General Manager of Community Parks, Rec and Culture. I'm joined here today by Chris Catania, our Manager of Municipal Facilities, and we'll both be providing the presentation today. This update and overview will provide a few different things to council: existing conditions of our current operations yard, background and a history of the site and the project, the process involved with the design and the construction of a municipal operations center, the investment in municipal operations as well as the municipal operations center, in particular critical infrastructure and core service delivery for the town, efficiency features and benefits that have been built into the facility and the site, and lastly, the way forward or our planned activities moving forward. So I'll just start and ask that Chris begin the presentation with the existing conditions of our current operations yard and a brief background and history of the site and this project.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak and to give a brief overview here of the Operations Center. As Mr. CEO has indicated before, Our current location for our public works and parks teams are based out of the back of the sports complex. They're situated here on a 4-acre piece of land. These facilities and buildings are quite dated. The site itself is actually very difficult, and it's not really efficient, so difficult circulation for crews and work vehicles. This site also lacks proper storage of machinery, equipment, and materials. In one of the photos here, you'll see some of the operational bays, and currently these bays are they're not quite high enough for some of the operations that to put in heavy machinery and trucks, loaders, that type of thing, as well as the width of these bays. Staff are operating currently out of the trailers. We have had some operational issues over the last few years with, as Mr. CEO has mentioned, with some freezing of pipes with the washrooms, as well as some mechanical unit failures for heat, and this has happened sometimes in the dead of winter as well. So a little bit of an update here on the history of the Operations Center, specifically as it relates to 19850 Woodbine Avenue. The land itself was procured on a 20-acre site below market value. There's been a lot of background work that's gone into this for the design, including multiple stakeholder meetings for space requirements. The town itself, a few years back, had retained an architect, Strasman Architects, to help with the concept design as well as the detailed design. And there's been various studies, reports, and approvals from different authorities to this point in time as well. The CPRC team has gone out in the past to pre-qualify general contractors, and as many of you are aware, we were out to tender late last year, or actually the middle of last year when it came to our first phase, which was the earthworks, the grading, the site servicing piece. And a few photos on the next couple slides as well. This photo here of 19850 Woodbine Avenue for the Operations Center shows early fall grading at this point, just really taking off the surface here, and as well piling up topsoil. So this is looking to the west, and then the grading just to make sure that it meets grades for our civil design. And as we got later into the project, into the fall, once the grading was accomplished, we got into some site servicing and stormwater management here. And this phase is substantially completed at this point in time. The project was completed under a council approved budget as well, and under budget.
So with an investment in a municipal operations center, the center will support 120 full-time and seasonal staff members. As a comparator, the Civic Center supports the work of approximately 100 full-time, part-time, and seasonal staff. The staff at the Municipal Operations Center will maintain critical infrastructure for the town and provide core service delivery under the following departments and branches that you see on the slide. In addition, return on investment is efficiencies. Some of the features and benefits with regards to the Operations Center: we have incorporated some of the most advanced and efficient structural, mechanical, electrical building systems, ultimately increasing energy efficiency, reducing waste, and mitigating operating costs. As an example, within the building, the building envelope has enhanced insulation and R values, white roof technology to increase reflectivity, decrease increase efficiency for HVAC systems, high efficiency HVAC systems within the building with automated control systems, large air distribution fans in the high bay service areas to push warm air down in the winter, and those fans can reverse to pull the warm air up in the summertime. Low flow hands-free plumbing fixtures, high efficiency plumbing fixtures, and high efficiency LED lighting both inside the facility and outside the facility on motion sensors, photocells, and timers. When designing the Operations Center, two critical functions occur. A space needs analysis, which determines the amount of square footage to support staff, but more importantly, a functional analysis that looks at how the staff works in that space and how they interact together with adjacencies. So the staff has a number of efficiencies measures built in, and these are examples. A good example of this would be a drive-through sand and salt dome, as opposed to a sand and salt dome where you have to pull in and then back out. The efficiencies of a drive-through sand and salt dome is that the operator of the vehicle does not have to back up. So what happens is it increases the efficiency for the load time of the vehicle, and it decreases the risk involved with backing up a large 6-ton plow truck. So this is one of many examples that we've built into this facility design, and we've worked very closely with staff with our functional analysis program to inform the design to ensure we are building upon our efficiencies.
I'm going to speak a little bit more about the actual site itself, specifically when it comes into the environmental piece with the operations center. We are actually with this site. It's actually to the west, next to a provincially protected wetland. There are many low-impact development features in conjunction with the LSRCA for this site. This includes the entire roof space for rainwater harvesting. We also, based on the LSRCA, achieved over 80% phosphorus reduction into the watershed through the proper stormwater techniques and practices. Furthermore, we have a few other secondary structures. So as the general manager has mentioned as well, we'll have an enhanced salt dome. We're going to have enhanced a cover for our CIS team. And as well, there will be an additional first of its kind here for East Gwillimbury, a greenhouse and an enhanced tree farm just to the north of the greenhouse. So this will actually enhance our parks programs as well. We are using recycled material as well for some of our surfacing in the parking lot. So any of the we're reusing basically asphalt millings that's been generated through other road projects that are actually currently on site. And with this, we're also going to have multiple material storage bays so that we can basically organize proper material and storage handling as well on this site. Furthermore, with the environmental piece, there will be carpooling parking. We have a couple of electric vehicles charging stations with about another 6 more that are roughed in as well. And as I mentioned from a previous slide, the old or the current setup behind the sports complex being not efficient and poor circulation, this facility itself and the site will have enhanced circulation for all our vehicles from CIS all the way through to the parks, and as well for emergency services when it comes to specific needs through an EOC, but also through driver training. Moving forward here, at this point, as you're aware, we just substantially completed the earthworks and site servicing late last year. We're at the point for Q2 here to look at awarding the facility construction. If that is approved, then we would be looking at mobilization for early this summer to have the next contractor on site, as well as establishment of building footings, foundation, structural. The goal would be to look at late this fall, try to enclose the facility for interior facility construction, and then late into 2020, having substantial completion for this project.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's it for our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions, Councillor Carruthers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation, and I love all the green initiatives that going into it. And I think we've gone from it being a nice add-on to an expectation that there would be things like the rainwater harvesting and the vehicle charging stations and that. So thank you for incorporating all of that into the building design. We're building this building for the future. And so as we move forward, it's nice to know that there's more charging ports roughed in. I'm looking at that roof. That's a huge roof, and wondering if there's been thought put to roughing in for solar. It'd be great to have solar on the top of that roof. At the very least, we know it's cheaper to put it in at the beginning than to try and retrofit after the fact. So I'm just wondering if there was thought put towards that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the structural steel assemblies can support a future solar array if required. At this point, we took a look at all of the facility fit features and benefits and their cost. And right now, under feed-in tariff, the fit contracts have gradually been decreasing over time. And with a cost-benefit analysis initially, with a longer payback under a feed-in tariff contract, at this point in time, we wanted to focus on the core building requirements first, and then maybe look at some of those nice-to-haves, not need-to-haves at a later date.
Okay, but it's been designed in such a way that if we do decide to put a solar array on the roof, it wouldn't be a huge retrofitting cost.
Through you, Madam Mayor, correct. So the structural, the biggest cost is, and determinant on whether or not you can support solar photovoltaic is whether you have the structural steel assembly. And in this case, we do have that assembly to be able to add that on at a later date.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Councillor Morton?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to congratulate you, Aaron, and all your staff, and Chris, because I know how hard he's worked on this as well. It's been a long time coming, and we've been talking about this for years with our guys out in the back, and you know, it's about time that we move them somewhere else, and so that time has now come, and I look forward to seeing 2020 and the end result, and congratulations to all of you.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Karmazin and Mr. Catania. I just wanted to draw attention. I think it was an understated comment that was made at the end of his first part of his presentation, but Mr. Catania noted that the site servicing was delivered on time and under budget, and I think under budget was certainly not as he should have been more excited about it, because I certainly was. Let's put it that way.
Jump up and down.
I wanted to comment on that and draw that attention
you.
to that, because it's freed up resources for us to be able to spend in other places on this project. Thank you.
Councillor Crone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. Fabulous plans, and I don't think anyone here disputes the need for these improved space, you know, for our staff, and certainly staff needs to be congratulated for putting up with the conditions in which they were working. If you know your surroundings are a little nicer, it affects your mood, and you're a little, you know, look a little more forward to going into work. Just curious, once the new site is up and running, what will become of the space that was vacated?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it was noted in the Parks and Rec Master Plan, the Health and Active Living Plan 2018, that site would present a great opportunity to either expand facilities at the existing sports complex or expand parks facilities over time. So that would require additional analysis work on behalf of staff and some consultants to then present some options back to council on some best uses for that space, which is approximately 4 acres of space in the Sharon Village Core. So it is highly desirable from a Parks and Rec perspective to have that space retained, either for facilities or parkland. So that is the intent of staff is to present options back to council for the repurposing of that land.
Madam Mayor, next.
Thank you very much. When we started to take a look at the list of high efficiency, low impact recycling, I wrote down here, I think we're going to be a model for other organizations that are looking at new facilities. So many times the facilities don't come in on time, they don't come in on budget, and we're already off to a terrific start. It's been already mentioned here, the number of years that we have put up with what we've had, and particularly our staff. We value our staff, and they should have good facilities. They're doing a terrific job, and they should have good facilities to back that up. So I'm excited about this. It's finally coming. The list of all of the environmental issues, I think is going to be, as I said, a model for other communities to take a look at. The availability of a greenhouse opens a door for us that we have started to push in the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm not sure how many others on council, but for myself and a few I know have already spoken to me, how important flowers and fauna are for our community. It comes back over and over again. It might be a rain barrel that's put on a corner, and people call here, or you see them and you're out shopping, talking about what a difference it makes in a community. It talks about who we are. And I think the addition of the buildings that will enhance our tree and flower and fauna are going to be extremely important as we move forward and grow. It's the softer side of who we are. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Thank you. What a great presentation. As I was talking to General Manager Commerson when we were having our meeting, I kept asking all these 5, 6, 7 questions. It's covered, it's covered, it's covered, it's covered. So obviously everything that the wishes of the community and also the operational people, they have something to be excited about and something to be proud. I'm sure they're more excited than anything else. It's like a breath of fresh air when that happens. Anyway, that's congratulations on the hard work and all the team together. And the most important, saving money is number one. Thank you. Could I have a mover, please? To receive, yes. Councillor Roy-DiClemente. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we go to, we're going to go number 3, Community Parks, Rec, Culture, CPRC 2019-17, tender award of the contracts. General Manager Commerson, your comments, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a report before Council, which is the execution of a construction contract for the Municipal Operations Center. It's a comprehensive report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that Council may have.
May I have a mover, please, to receive this? Councillor Crone. Now, if there's any question in the committees. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
I don't think it'll come as any surprise, Mr. Chair, when I ask if staff could provide a bit of context. The final recommendation on this list is that we seek ratification on June 4th, which is later today. So I'm just wondering if staff could, I think I know the answer here, but if staff could just outline a little bit why we're awarding the largest contract in our history in the same day.
General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're seeking ratification today simply to expedite seasonal construction as presented to close in the facility to perform interior works over the winter. In particular, some of the key milestones over the summer period, spring and summer period, are excavation, pouring of footings and pads for the facility, and then ordering long lead delivery items such as structural steel and facility cladding, roofing, masonry, aluminum cladding, doors and windows. And this allows us to perform seasonal work, work inside the facility over the winter months. And the project team have projected ahead the schedule and are seeking ratification to provide that adequate time over the summer period to perform those seasonal construction activities.
Go ahead, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
So I may suggest then that that final resolution read that in order to maximize the 2019 construction season, the recommendations, and so that there's a bit of context here to say we need to be closed in before winter in order to minimize the risk. I think is important to be able to say that's why we're doing it. It's not because we're hurrying, but because we're hurrying.
Yes, okay. We will note that the general manager comes in.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I did have some questions about financing. I know that we often comment that we are debt-free and we have money in the bank and so on. However, this is a $16 million contract with assorted other expenses attached to it. The report does sort of outline at a high level that it's development charge eligible. As far as what the overall interim funding process will be, what that funding strategy is, I think we have an obligation to be a little bit more, to use a word that sometimes gets overused, fulsome in how we address this matter. Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions. Mr. Velchuk, do you want to reply to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, yeah, it is an important question, and we're happy to provide some more fulsome perspective for you to assist you in making your decision today. There's two primary aspects to, from a financial point of view, in dealing with a project like this. Number one would be a funding question. Do we have adequate funding? Where is that funding coming from? The second question is really around cash flow and timing of both the money going out for the project and the money coming in from the funding sources, and the need for potential construction financing. So our Director of Finance has a couple of slides, if they would be helpful, Mr. Chairman, that will provide a little extra information and hopefully give you reassurance that both of those matters have been thoroughly considered by staff.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of slides here to add on to the General Manager's comments. The first part is I want to go through a bit about the funding. So whether we have or we're planning for enough funds to be available to construct the facility. So the ask in the report or the budget is 16.9 million. And a few weeks ago, actually, Council approved the new development charge bylaw. And in that bylaw, we were able to update the costs associated with the Operations Center. So the first four categories here are the funds that we have included in the development charge background study. And with that, in addition to the community capital contribution, we have provided for the collection of enough funds to construct the facility. And what we were also able to do in the background study is to time the collections so that we are able to fund the facility within the allocation that's remaining in the YDSS system. So the question now is about financing or cash flow. So based on our projected funding that we're going to require, so I'd like to direct you to the chart on the left side. So right now, those funding sources that have been identified in the year end 2018, we have approximately $16.2 million in those reserves. But in order to be conservative, there's a number of scenarios that we could use to fund the facility. So this scenario, we've shown that instead of using the full amount that's in the reserves, we're projecting to use half the balances within the reserves. So that middle column, it shows that we've used, we're assuming that if we use half of the reserves that we have for those categories, we would need to borrow about $9.4 million. So based on a 10-year debenture at 4% interest, and I would like to move you over to the second chart on the right-hand side. If we borrowed that $9.4 million at interest rate of 4% over a 10-year period, estimated borrowing costs would be about $1.8 million, which would bring the total project cost to about $18.8 million. So what we were able to do in the background study and the bylaw revision is we included some borrowing costs. We assumed that we would be borrowing for the facility. So in our background study, we have, including the borrowing costs and the construction costs, we have a provision of $21.5 million. So that's what we were planning to collect within the allocation of the our remaining YDSS allocation. So there is sufficient funds that we are planning to collect over the time period. So the other thing I wanted to mention about the borrowing costs, so we've assumed that in this scenario that we'd be going externally to borrow, and we've assumed an interest rate of about 4%. The Development Charge Act says that you're allowed to borrow internally, which is called interfund borrowing, and they prescribe a minimum rate that you could use, which is the Bank of Canada rate, which is a lot less than the 4%. So there is still a bit more conservatism in those estimates as well. So, if there's any questions?
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. That's this is wonderful because this was my question. I think I did need all these slides to try to understand it. My question is, if we have, the very bottom line says we have $38.7 million, all development charges and CCC reserves. Why would we borrow when we have that much sitting in reserve?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that's where we get into the interfund borrowing. So instead of going outside, we could borrow internally and use those funds. It's all a matter of priority setting as well with the other projects that might need those reserve funds. So that's where the strategy would come in about whether we would borrow internally or go external.
Okay, so that's a decision yet to be made.
Right.
And when would that decision be made and how?
Go ahead, Mr. Balchuk.
Mr. Chairman, through you, thank you, clerks, for that help. So that decision will be made as we move forward and as cash flow requirements become more certain. The project is probably say a 12 to 18 month project. These balances you're looking at today are as of year-end 2018, so they're already 6 months out of date. We will have more money collected in DCs by the time we're starting to make progress payments and so on this new facility. So we will sort of be able to make those decisions as we go forward. My sense at this point, and I think you hit the nail on the head a moment ago, from a cash point of view, we have more than enough in the town reserves to cover this project, even if they're in some different categories. I believe the natural way to proceed with this is to interfund borrow to the degree necessary. It minimizes our borrowing costs, number one, and we have the adequate funds to do that, number two. So it will be on an as-required basis as we move forward. We can't predict exactly how much we'll collect between now and the time of payments that will be going out. What we're trying to demonstrate to committee is that we believe we will be adequately provided for, whatever that scenario looks like. This is a very conservative scenario. We believe that, in fact, the real scenario will be sort of more positive than even this.
Thank you very much. So this is sort of a worst case scenario. Bottom falls out of the market. We stop collecting DCs. We have to borrow. It would be 1.8 million in borrowing charges if it came to that, but that's not what we're expecting. Is that correct? Just want to make sure I'm getting this correctly.
Mr. Chairman, through you, we're suggesting here that if we used half of the reserves that were in place as at December 31st, this would be a scenario that likely would be more expensive than the scenario that we're envisioning. There's two things that will happen. Number one, we will have collected more DCs by the time payments are being made, and we've provided for a 4% borrowing rate. We believe that the actual rate will be lower than that when we go to actually start distributing payments on this project.
Thank you very much. It's always good to know what the sort of worst case scenario is, rather than you coming later and saying, hey, we didn't think about this. And also, I just wanted to confirm that this is all based on development that's been approved to go to YDSS, so this is not contingent on the Upper York, correct?
Mr. Chairman, through you, that's correct. And in fact, that was a strategic priority of staff as we went through the 8 to 12 month process to develop the DC that you just approved a couple of weeks ago.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, and then Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, can you tell me whose motion this is? I know we put it on the table.
To receive.
It was a motion to receive?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think if we're going to be working with the recommendations and awarding a contract, that I had a couple of suggestions. While this is great, I think what we have done for years now is we've been very proud of the fact that we're debt-free, and the option of potentially going to the market to borrow is one that we need to be taking quite mindfully. And to Councillor Carruthers' point, and also to Warren's point here, we have money in the bank at $38.7 million that we can use. However, this is only one of at least two, if not more, very major expenditures, and I'm thinking more along the lines of the Health and Active Living Plaza. And while, yes, we have significant financial resources available to us, being that we don't have any debt and we could issue debentures, we can borrow internally, we can go to the market, we can do all sorts of things. But I think we need to be a little bit more mindful of the fact that while we have those resources, they are limited in that I think our residents, while they would understand and support that we need a safer place for our operations staff to work from, they themselves would like a place to go and have a swim. And that project is even more expensive than this one. And for me, I would like to be a little bit more mindful of how we're funding this project, and also to be even more mindful of how we are going to protect the funds that are existing now for the Health and Active Living Plaza and not use them for this, and also how we're going to fund that one. And if we're going to issue debt from a philosophical perspective, I would rather issue debt for the Health and Active Living Plaza than for our ops center. But that's a position that I have, but I want to hear from staff that funding strategy. And I recognize that there is a quicksand of changes happening at the legislation level that we need to be mindful of as well. So I had some clauses that I had prepared, Mr. Chair. Once we finish this discussion, I'd like to put forward.
I noticed that our general manager was making notes, so I'm sure that he's aware of all this. Now, Joan, could I have your comments, Mr. Balchek?
Mr. Chairman, just through you to address the points about the two, as the councillor noted, very significant capital projects the town is undertaking, or certainly in the planning stages of. I just want to reassure committee that the Health and Active Living Plaza project uses separate and distinct funding components from the DC than does the Op Center project. So there is no funding categories listed in the DC on the screen in front of you that are used towards the Health and Active Living Plaza. The Health and Active Living Plaza, and perhaps the director can correct me if I'm wrong, is funded from the indoor rec development charge and the library development charge. neither of which are being used for the for the operations center. So we're confident that those are separately and distinctly funded.
Go ahead, Roy, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
So the notes at the bottom of this slide says total amount in all development charge and CCC reserves as of the end of last year's 38.7 million. That is is excluding the library and indoor rec, or is that including library and indoor rec? Is it in totality, or is it separating our health and active living plaza money out?
Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, through you, the 38.7 would include indoor recreation and library. My point is that the funding components being used for the op center, none of those funding components are used to fund the health and active living plaza.
Thank you.
With respect, Mr. Chair, we don't have a funding strategy at this point that's finalized, so we don't know that. That's not here in front of us. It's not laid out in the report, and it's not clear on the slide how we're doing that. I think we need to have staff come back to us with the full, that's what I referenced earlier, that we would have staff come back to us with the funding strategy for this project, as well as a future strategy for the Health and Active Living Plaza, because I would rather be very upfront and mindful of how we're doing that as we start to plan for the project, rather than planning for it after we award the contract to build it.
Mr. Belcheck.
Mr. Chairman, we're happy to come back with the other departments with more information if that's helpful. I do just want to point out that the funding strategy from our perspective is as laid out in the capital plan supporting the development charge that you just, Council just approved a couple of weeks ago. And in that development charge background study, the Health and Active Living Plaza is provided for through the indoor rec component and the library component. But we're happy to provide further confirmation and clarification of that if that's helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Belcheck. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this, and I certainly appreciate the additional slides to provide some more information. This is the kind of project that, if it's executed properly, it will go, with all due respect, pretty much unnoticed by the masses. Executed improperly, everyone's going to know about it, and we're all going to wear it. I remember when this building here was built, and there was cost overruns. Everyone knew about it. So I think I really support comments made by my colleagues about funding and making sure that we're exercising prudence. And I would also suggest that we exercise an abundance of caution, and I would encourage staff that we look at long-term funding strategies for this, but also I would like to see some contingency plans that do not involve raising taxes or borrowing. Let's be creative. Let's look at what options are before us. Just knowing the options, not saying that we're going to have, but so that we have a complete picture of all the avenues available to us to help fund this. And we know that our development charges are going to slow down as our allocation diminishes, and who knows what's going to happen with the market. So I would like to see that some contingency plans that are creative, that do not involve taxes and borrowing. The second point I'd like to make is with regards to the contract, have we built in, or will we build in, and I'll call it, for the lack of a better phrase, an escape clause? We're in a position right now where the very future of East Gwillimbury is in question. The province has said that they're reviewing, what our future governance will be. We may be merged in with another community. At that point, does it make sense to be going down this road? I don't know. I would feel greater comfort if we had something into the contract that would minimize the penalties that we saw if for whatever reasons we had to break the contract, because we are now part of the greater municipality of Newmarket Aurora, Gwillimbury, or whatever the name will be if that does happen. I hope it doesn't, but anyway, that's a point I would just throw out to you. Happy to hear any feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crone. A lot of good feedbacks here. I'm hearing from my colleagues that we come back with a staff report on this matter to find out a strategy, exactly what they all the opinions of our colleagues. Any other further question? Go ahead. Mayor Hackson, please, first.
Thank you. I'm hearing that we are wanting a little more information on financing, and I would ask staff the timing of being able to provide that to us.
Go ahead, Mr. Webster.
Through you, Mr. Chair, finance staff have done a pretty admirable job in an uncertain world. And so just a couple of things I'd like to note. Rightly or wrongly, we've made this entirely development charge funded, and we've had the development industry agree to that. And so to Councillor Crone, the intention is that this will cost taxpayers $0 to build. That's the plan. And now once it's operating, I think it's fair enough to say that everybody that lives in this town should contribute towards it. With regards to the provincial announcements that were up until recently coming out daily, it appears that I think one of our councillors here suggested they take a pause, and remarkably they look like they have. They actually listened, slowed down. The one thing they've done, if you cut through the chase, is they've delayed the provincial health cut funding by 1 year. That's the only feedback we do have. I would suggest that a service area for a town that's going to be 50,000 and is designated to grow to over 100,000 by the province itself needs a adequate works facility. That's without question. I think regardless of your governance form, I think that there will be a need for a works depot here. And to be fully certain, I think here's what the staff will do. They would come back and they'd say, well, if council wants certainty, we will put X dollars as a down payment, and we will, people are using the word borrow. I guess we can talk about debt, but I think we have the capacity maybe to work with some lenders for some short-term construction financing that might have some flexibility to it, and it isn't a typical 10 or 20-year debenture. That might be the option, is that we would come back and say, we will go to the market and work with a lender, and if this council wants certainty, we're going to get a 7 to 10 year loan, and that's the option. And I think what we're trying to say in this report, maybe we didn't do it as good a job as we could, is we'd like to follow this project as it builds out over the next 12 to 24 months and gauge what's happening with the revenue inflows coming through the development sector. And we do have 5,200 units left, I have to remind folks. And so the point where we're at, where we have close to $40 million in our development reserves, only represents about the first third of our growth. We still have 67% or so of guaranteed allocation to come. Now, what's not guaranteed is what the builders are charging and how the market reacts. So it's a little bit of an analysis. I think to try to table something would be, we certainly couldn't do it today, but maybe we could take a week or so. And we do want to keep this project moving, and ask finance staff to work with our lenders and other agencies in the various departments, and maybe we could try to incorporate something as a special council session, because I think it might be important enough that it doesn't wait 2 weeks, and I think we might have the ability to do that. So we'd have to work around council's calendars and whatnot, but I think, Mr. Valchich, I'm looking towards you as to what do you think would be a reasonable time? Would it be would a week, or
2 weeks
would you require the full 2 weeks?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I think for us to put some scenarios together, it probably won't take too long, certainly within 2 weeks. That would not be, that would not be difficult. We'll simply be, just for clarification, we'll simply be building on the scenarios that we have before you. If we can put together a couple of other scenarios, it's just to reaffirm to committee, it's we tried to paint what we thought was sort of a very conservative picture, which you can see there's, for lack of a better word, a buffer of over $2.5 million in this scenario, in addition to a buffer built into the interest rate, because we know that we do have cash in the bank that we can use. So to go externally at this point will be more costly. But if we want absolute certainty, we can go a more costly route. That's not a problem. So we could come back certainly within 2 weeks, and if committee wished it sooner, we would do our best to try and get you something in a week.
I think that Mayor Hackson has another comment, and then, geez, we got a lot here. But then we got Councillor Roy-DiClemente, and then Councillor Carruthers. Go ahead.
I think simply stated is that it's a matter of borrow or not to borrow, and a matter of if you are going to borrow, is it going to be inside, external or internal? I think that's the simple answer. This is incredibly important, not only for the 7 people who are making the decision to make sure that we have all the information at hand, but it also is important for our residents to understand the process. It's a very different community that we live in that has money in the bank for an operations center and for a health and active living plaza. It's unusual across Ontario and probably across Canada. We have it because we've waited until we've had the money to do it. So now it's a matter of making sure that everybody understands how it's going to be financed, that as a community, we are not going to see tax increases because of this. In fact, it has come, as you've indicated, 100% from the development that we have here. And I think the residents that have been here over the years who are saying, why do we have all this growth, are looking for a reason why we have all this growth that for the benefit of those that have been here for quite some time as well. And we've handled our finances very well with that. I would suggest that this is an extremely important position. I'm not hearing any member of council saying we don't want it and we don't need it. I think it's more important that we now need to understand the financing of it, external, internal, not at all. And we as elected officials and you as staff are able to articulate that to our taxpayers. If it's a week, if it's 9 days, 11 days, whatever it's going to take, I believe I'm hearing here that this is an extremely important information to finalize this moving forward. We're at your disposal. Thank you. And I realize that time is money when we're down to a decision like this, particularly in the construction season, but that has to be set aside before anything else. The finances have to be very well understood.
Thank you very much. Very well put. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, and then I think Councillor Crone was next after that. No, Carruthers. CC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, look, we're $4 million into a $24 million project. This is not a surprise to anybody in this room that this is happening, that this is expensive. It's also not a surprise to anybody in this room that we have the financial resources available to us to pay for it. It's just a question of how that is profiled. And so for me, I feel confident enough to move forward with awarding the contract, to get started, get in the ground so that we don't lose a construction season over dithering about whether or not we're going to borrow or whether we're going to finance or bridge finance and so on. I think we absolutely need to move forward today, but we also want more information to come back to us as we are mindful of that. And so from my perspective, I'm fine to move forward with this. The clause at the end, I think it's number 6, that we would amend it to say that it's in order to be able to retain, what did we say it was? That it was in order to maximize the construction season. But I think, personally, I'd like to add 2 clauses, and I've prepared them and sent them to the clerk, Mr. Chair. But that first, the first being that, given the numerous financial options and resources available to the municipality to fund the tender for the project, that staff be directed to report back on a final recommended funding strategy, including interim bridging options, possible borrowing costs, and development charge balances and collection. And secondly, Mr. Chair, that council directs staff to retain and protect any capital funds eligible to be used on the health and active living complex in Queensville to be directed to that project, and to report back on options for a funding strategy for this major capital expenditure, as well as any other projected large-scale projects within the development charge background study timeframe.
Well put.
So what I'm trying to do is instead of working backwards, once we have an award, a tender award to give for some of our larger projects, instead that we move forward knowing, with those goals in mind, and knowing that there are some changes that will happen, but at least we have a plan. And I don't think that if we do these 2 clauses, that we need to have a special council meeting, an emergency council meeting, because we know we have the money. But that we have staff report back to us as the work continues, so that we know exactly how this is being structured.
It's all noted, the changes and also your comments. Thank you very much. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing about the urgency to get shovels in the ground. Well, it might only be 10 days. I know from building hundreds of schools that 10 days can make all the difference. And you end up with a rainy summer, you end up with a strike by some of the tradespeople, and suddenly you don't have an enclosed building, and you lose the entire winter, and the whole project's delayed by another year. I think that would be irresponsible. I think that echoing what I've heard from my colleagues, everyone here is in agreement that we should be going forward with this. There is some questions around financing. I think that we're very fortunate that we have options in financing. If there was only one option, then there wouldn't be so many questions. So I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Roy-DiClemente that we should move ahead with ratifying the contract, the tender award today, with the additional clauses of staff bringing forth more clarity on which financial option they would be recommending to us. And I would be happy to accept those amendments that Councillor Roy-DiClemente has brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go on, I just wanted to ask the general manager what the value, did we pay for this land, and what the value is right now, just as an additional for interest of the people or the media, so they know that we did a good deal there. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we paid approximately $110,000 per acre for the land. It's estimated through current real estate values, because the land is now earthworked and serviced, that it's potentially $400,000 per acre, which is a net increase of approximately $300,000 per acre times 20 acres would be approximately a $6 million increase in land value alone.
That's a good news story anyway. Just thought I would do that. Now, do we need to read this, Mr. Clerk, what the changes are, or we just call a vote to receive?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll assist council with regards to the initial motion. We have recorded here that Councillor Crone has moved the initial motion as presented in the report, correct, Councillor Crone? And we have an amending motion presented by Councillor Roy-DiClemente, which we'll put up on the screen, and that has to be voted on first.
Okay.
And I believe it's capturing the additional clauses plus the amendment to Clause 6 to expedite for seasonal construction. So that is your vote first, is on the amending motion. And then we go back to the main motion with Councillor Crone as the mover.
Okay, could everybody have a mover on this? All in favor? The motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we go back to the other motion. Could I have a move by Councillor Crone? All in favor? As amended? All in favor? Great. Good. See, no, there's any other question, General Manager, or any comments before we go to the next item?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the last one I have here. We go back to now to number 2, Community Parks and Recs and Culture Presentation, Parks and Planning Open Update. General Manager, comments on? Give us an update on that. Parks?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. In 2018, Community Parks, Recreation and Culture, in particular our Parks Planning and Development branch, opened 9 new parks and 2 new trail connections. This year we have another 6 parks scheduled for substantial completion, and we are now booking those park openings now. And we have, this will make our count up to 16 parks within 16 months of opening. In 2020, we have another 6 parks that are now projected to be opened as well in various states of design and tendering and construction. In particular, of note are 2 of our community parks, and one being Mount Albert Community Park and the other being Queensville Community Park. I'd like to welcome Frank Mazzotta, our Manager of Parks Development and Operations, and Justin Tucker, our Parks Project Manager, to provide a brief update on our Parks Development and construction schedule for 2019 and 2020.
Go ahead, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of Council. My name is Frank Mazzotta, and I'm the Manager of Parks Development and Operations. With me here I have Justin Tucker, who is the Parks Project Manager. Justin's role has been very important. Justin's been very involved in managing a lot of our parks construction. He is managing all aspects of our outdoor parks and trails. And with me here, Justin will be presenting an update on parks scheduled to be opened in 2019, and I will be presenting some further projects that are starting in 2019 but will wrap up and open in 2020. So I'll hand it over to Justin.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of Council. I'm pleased to provide you guys with an update of the new park development going on in East Gwillimbury, starting with the Holland Landing Skate and Scooter Zone. Located in the front of the Holland Landing Community Center, this is East Gwillimbury's first skateboard park. The project was completed last summer and has been a great addition to the community center. Local youth played a huge part in the design and in helping design and facilitate this park, in particular a young gentleman named Johnny Amato. We will be welcoming Johnny Amato at the June 13th opening, as he will be doing a demonstration for the crowd. Manorhampton Park. This park is on the opposite corner of Sharon Public School, just behind the sales offices on Leslie Street. A unique feature about this park is that we brought in a custom clay track mix and built a bike park with jumps varying in difficulty. Another unique feature about this park is that it is the starting point of the David Wilson Trail and connects to the Sharon Village Trail system. Valley View Park. Valley View Park is a large park in the Queensville development. This park has a senior lit and irrigated soccer field. Spectators will have a choice of an elevated viewing platform or field level bleachers, both overlooking the valley. We incorporated playground equipment such as a large climbing net, and a zip line, which will be East Gwillimbury's first of each. Walter Tunney Park. This park is located in Sharon South development, just south of Manorhampton Street. The park is long and linear, and just beyond the northern limit is an old farmer's laneway surrounded by mature trees that were preserved while developing this site. The park has a meandering, I think the timer's on, sorry. The park has a meandering walkway from end to end, which will then connect to a parkette connecting this development to Manorhampton Street. Ridgeview Park. This 10-acre park is the largest park being constructed within the round of growth in East Gwillimbury. It's located in the Kerbal development in Holland Landing West. Ridgeview Park is filled with amenities such as a lit baseball diamond, fitness stations, 3-on-3 basketball court, and playground equipment. A unique feature about this park is that there are a number of reading nooks and a large outdoor classroom with tiered seating. The park is located between 2 school blocks, which will benefit from this shared space. Couples Farm Park. This park is in the Oxford Homes development on the south side of Mount Albert Side Road in Mount Albert. This park has a playground, 3-on-3 basketball court, and a large shade structure with picnic tables. Collaborating with the Recreation Department, we added 2 fitness pods set up in a circuit with an adjacent open space which can be used as programmable space and utilized for outdoor fitness classrooms. Frank will continue with the rest of the slides.
Thank you. Just a word of note, the slides that were just presented, they do have opening events and the dates. If they have and times, they've probably been already populated within your calendars. So we look forward to opening those specific parks. So our next park that is scheduled for construction this year is located, we've named this one Ridgeview Park. The park is approximately 4.3 acres, and it will be adjacent to the large water tower in Holland Landing West. This park will actually attach, sorry, we're fighting, this park will be attached to the Kerbal development, and in total this park will be 15 acres. This will be the largest park within the new developments that we see. Some of the unique features within this one are some very tall playground equipment, which will be directly adjacent to the water tower, and I think the kids will really enjoy understanding the sense of scale and of that water tower compared to some of the playground equipment. And the views from this park are absolutely gorgeous. You're able to see the ridges within over towards Bradford to the north. Very spectacular view on this park. Our next park is Temple Park. This park it was currently being tendered right now. Construction is slated for early summer. And this park is passive in nature and will include a very, very dedicated historic elements to celebrate the temple, the Sharon Temple. And we've been working with many stakeholder groups that have worked towards this concept. Allen Grove Park is located in the Sharon Village development. This is the last of the parks that we are building out. It's just to the south of Mount Albert Road. It's a very small parkette that has some seating areas, a very small playground, and views out towards the southeast towards a stormwater management pond. This will be started this year and most likely be finished this year. However, an opening will be planned for next year. Wingfoot Park, this is in the Holland Landing East development. This park here is currently being worked out detailed design, and it includes large full-size softball diamond, playground equipment, parking area for users, and half-court basketball. This one most likely will be started in 2020. This is getting a little bit of a late start, and we look forward to opening this one up as well. And a couple of capital projects. Queensville Park redevelopment. This project here, Council is aware of. We will be coming to Council at the next meeting with a report recommending the award of the contract. It has been tendered, and we have drafted up the report, and you will see that within the next few weeks. We're very excited to get this one off the ground, and certainly these are just some pictures of the existing conditions. And finally, Mount Albert Community Center. This one here has been in the works for several years now as well. As a capital project, we are working with several stakeholders with this one, including the Lions Club. Some of the unique features include the skate park, which is to the top right, and the addition of a larger new shade pavilion for Mount Albert Sports Day and the community. This project is approximately about a week to 2 weeks away from being tendered, and shovels will be in the ground this year. We anticipate construction will be approximately between 60 to 70% completed this year, and then some of the finer details of soft landscaping completed in early 2020. That concludes our presentation, and thank you very much.
Great presentation. Do we have any idea how many parks we have in total right now? Do we have the largest parks in York regions of all these parks? I can't believe it. I'm so grateful. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I don't have the exact numbers, but we're certainly, in terms of growth, we are certainly closing out the most parks in York region in terms of new park development.
Something for us to be proud. Thank you. Could I have a mover receiving this presentation? Councillor Roy-DiClemente. Are there any questions in the committees? Okay, Councillor Roy-DiClemente first, and then Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I wanted to recognize Mr. Tucker's efforts as a councillor whose constituents are hotly anticipating many of these new park openings. I get a lot of questions, and I field them through the usual channels, and it's usually Mr. Tucker who has got the answer for us. And I wanted to recognize his efforts. He's doing an amazing job staying on top of all of these projects. Mr. Chair, I did have a question through you to Mr. Mazzotta. You noted that in Holland Landing West, there's 2 Ridgeview parks. There's one that's 10 acres that we're opening that Mr. Tucker mentioned, and then you've got one that's starting with that's near the water tower. Are they adjacent to each other, and it's just 10 acres of one and 5 acres or another that are connected, or how is that working?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the 2 park blocks are connected, so they will form one park, and the entire park will be called Ridgeview Park.
Thank you. And if I may, another question. Mr. Mazzotta, you noted that the Winged Foot Park is going to be started in 2020, and it's got a bit of a late start. Do we have a sense of the occupancy rate in that subdivision? Because I know that our subdivision agreements say that at 50% occupancy, the developer has to deliver a park. So I'm just wondering, are we still within that time frame, or are there some issues there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, good question. So the Wingfoot development, there are 2 phases. The park block came on in phase 2. So the occupancy in phase 1, I'd have to double check, but I believe they're nearing the end of phase 1 occupancy. It's the phase 2 that's got a slow start. So it's the most recent one, and I do believe they're under the 50% for phase 2.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor. Carruthers.
Thank you so much. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is wonderful when it's all in one place like this and we see all the various things that you've incorporated and spread them around the town. That's absolutely incredible. Holland Landing kids love the scooter park. One thing that we've noticed, though, is they're whipping across the street to the variety store. So Councillor Foster and I have been working on looking at possibility of a crosswalk there to help keep them safe. Scooter parks are a little bit different than other parks where kids are tend to be walking back and forth. We're seeing kids going across that Yonge Street very, very quickly. So we're working on that, and that's aside from this presentation, but I just wanted to mention it because with the skate park potentially in Mount Albert. I just want to make sure that we're being a little bit more proactive. If a crosswalk is warranted in Holland Landing, it's not going to happen tomorrow. Those kids are going to be whipping across the street all summer until this actually happens. So I just want to make sure that with Mount Albert, maybe we can be a little bit more proactive in looking at what potential traffic patterns would be with kids, and if there's anything we can do with traffic calming in connection with that, just to make sure that we're keeping them as safe as possible and being as proactive as possible. Thanks.
Thanks for those good questions. Any other questions? Member of the committees? 5 news correctly that you moved it, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. All in favor of this motion? And motion carried. That's it from me. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are on item J, and that's Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services with Councillor Carruthers in the chair.
Thank you. So we're on page 45 of our agenda, and we have just 2 items today. The first one being the request for an all-way stop installation at Queensville Side Road and Centre Street. And I'll turn this over to General Manager Molinari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first report is an all-way stop installation at Queensville Side Road, Centre Street. Staff did the warrant analysis, and a all-way stop is warranted on the basis of poor sight lines. So we do note that there is a capital project to do some work at this location in the future, but we're likely 2 years away from having that construction in place. And to ensure safety for residents in the interim, we are recommending that all-way stop be put in place at this time.
Thank you. There's 2 recommendations on our agenda. One, to receive the report, and the second, that an all-way stop be installed at Queensville Side Road and Centre Street intersection. Can I have someone move that? Councillor Crone, is there any questions? Councillor Morton.
The only concern I have with this is winter time, because it gets very, very slippery up in that area, and if everyone is going to have to stop on that hill to get up it going east, I'm concerned about the sliding and backing up, and because it's happened many times during the winter now, and if everyone's going to stop, I'm just a little concerned about how we may be causing more trouble than what we've had now.
Mr. Molinari.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly part of the winter operations is to ensure safe roads. So those areas on our hills and curves, et cetera, get a little bit extra salt depending on conditions, and this would be no different. So your concern certainly is noted, and I agree that is an area that we will have to pay some special attention to, but I think with the proper maintenance on that, we should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Any other questions? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to staff. I just want to thank you for this. I know a number of people that I've spoken to have expressed great concern about that intersection. There's, I think, a general feeling in the area that it's not safe, and that this is welcomed, and I know you'll make a lot of folks happy in the area, that they'll have this, traffic safety is certainly a big thing for me. I appreciate Councillor Morton's concerns, and I have every faith that you folks will be able to keep the roads nicely salted in the winter. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Foster.
This is a bad intersection, no doubt. Is there any room to further improve the sight lines, or is it an encroachment deal with private property kind of thing?
Mr. Molinari.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's actually the reason for the capital project. So that capital project is going to look at some of the vertical geometry of Queensville, and if we can take the top crest off of that curve with a little bit of some design work on the vertical design of that particular roadway, and maybe improve some of those sight lines. That's the objective of that overall design assignment.
Thank you. Any further questions? I have just one question. What is the expected installation of this, Mr. Molinari?
Through you, Madam Chair, we expect we should be able to get this through within the next month or two.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? That's carried. Our next is coming back, the memo regarding the Holland Landing Lagoon update, and I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Molinari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This memo is an update as per Council's request to come back with some updates. And after hearing the region's presentation at the last council meeting, we just wanted to provide an update and summary of what staff heard, and we tried to recraft the letter to MP Mulrooney, and the letter is there for Council's review, and we're happy to receive any feedback.
Comments or questions? Mr. Foster.
Just as an idea, I probably should know this, but are there any means of communications to the residents in the area now when anything is going to be done at the lagoons? I ask because not this past weekend, but the weekend before, which was well past what we thought would be the Easter weekend offload or whatever they call it, and it was bad down there. I stopped at a friend's place who lives right there on Cedar Street, and we talked about the possibility of the region being able to notify residents or somebody in the area, just so you don't plan something outside that particular day when it might be bad. Now, that particular night it was bad. There's oftentimes it is, and there's, I mean, we've all been around there. We know how that works. I'm just wondering if there's any, at this point, is there any messaging that goes out, and could there be?
Mr. Molinari.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, whenever the region's doing some work, I know that they've done some maintenance on the lagoons over the last couple of years, and those works were notified. They don't exactly have the exact dates of when they're doing that, but they give a range of time when that work is going to be performed. And I believe all that work has been completed to date. So, as far as notification, that we would be working with the region on any type of notification, try and coordinate to make sure that residents knew of any major works like that were going on.
Thank you. I just had a couple of comments on this. This was originally brought forward in April, and the purpose when I brought this forward was to alert our MPP that we were getting significant complaints from residents about the odor. And the letter seems to have morphed into asking for the environmental assessment to be pushed forward. And I think we've kind of lost the reason that I asked for this letter. I think that the first letter where we spoke about, excuse me, we spoke about the residents' complaints and Councillor Foster's comments that it is ongoing. And I think that I'm not sure that our MPP knows that. And I think it's important that we detail that in a letter. And we were originally, the original letter and the original memo was called decommissioning the lagoons. And I think that that was our initial thrust. I think every time it's been tied to the Upper York, it gets delayed by, oh, we don't have an EA. And that was sort of the passing the buck, so to speak, going round and round. And what my original intention was just to separate out the issue with lagoons from everything else, to say this needs to be dealt with. And it was my understanding after our presentation from the region that it was council's wish that we would bring all parties to the table and to look for solutions in advance of the Upper York, because the Upper York's not going to be here in a timely manner. So I'm not in favor of the letter, the new letter that's been put forward, because it doesn't detail the concerns the way the first letter did. I'd be in favor of bringing back the first letter that talks about the concerns and adding onto it a request that our MPP's office arrange for a roundtable with members of the municipality as well as the region and the government, the provincial government, to look for solutions to deal with the odor coming off the lagoons. And I understand from talking with General Manager Molinari that there is other things we can do, such as putting treatment in before things reach the lagoons, but we need to talk with the region about that, whether that's our jurisdiction or their their jurisdiction. So it really sounds like we need that sit down with everybody to address the lagoon odors. And I think that was the intent, the original intention of the letter is around the odors. So I'll put that forward to my colleagues for comments if they want to hear the previous letter. I do have it pulled up here, where we're at with this. What's the feeling? This is just the only motion here is just for receipt. I'm not going to push to send this letter, this new letter, because I don't think it addresses the concerns that I raised in April. I will then ask if we can send the letter from last month with the addition of a request that our MPP bring all parties together to discuss possible solutions. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just reading the letter that's before us today, and it says that we're asking the MPP's assistance to help advance the approval of UISS and facilitate any approvals for interim works associated with the lagoons to address ongoing odor problems that negatively affect our residents. I think while the focus of the letter may have shifted slightly towards the UISS, I think that it still does contain the context, which is there's a smell and it needs to be addressed. It talks about the lagoons being in service since 1974, and that's really, for me, I think that's the big issue. Is the fact is that there's allocation in the YDSS, or apparently there is. That's the larger question that I have for staff. Is there was a comment made when I asked about the allocation in the room and the pipe for the lagoons to be taken offline, and it wasn't clear that there was allocation still available, and I'd like to explore that a little further with staff. It's not related to this particular piece of correspondence, but I think the correspondence covers at a high level what we're trying to do is draw attention to the matter that there's an antiquated piece of infrastructure, it needs to be addressed, and there's this other larger looming issue that also needs to be given some attention. So it's a two-pronged approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Looking for comments from my colleagues. The letter has been changed from Holland Landing Lagoon Wastewater Treatment Facility update to Upper York Sewage Solution IEA. I was wondering if we can, in order to keep the letter focused on what its original intention was, if we can change the subject line back to the Holland Landing Lagoon Water Treatment Facility update. I see some nods, or let's see if anyone has any objections to that. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Madam Chair, I don't have a problem amending the letter through staff to address the main issue, which was the sewage lagoons being an antiquated piece of infrastructure that need to be addressed sooner rather than later, regardless of what you're doing with the IEA.
Good. Okay, so I think that staff have our comments. If we could maybe just look at the previous letter and see if there's a way to beef this up a little bit more to make sure it's clear that the problem is ongoing complaints from residents. This briefly touches on it, but I just want our MPP to understand that these complaints continue to come in throughout the year, and that make sure that this is not tied just to the Upper York, that there needs to be an interim solution. I'll make that very clear. I think I hate writing letters by committee, and I hate this coming back month after month, because it was, March, April that we got the original complaints about this. I'm wondering if staff can just work with the mayor to put out a final letter. We have, between these two letters, I think there's lots of good material there. I'm not sure how things have been done in the past, Madam Mayor, but would that be appropriate? Madam Mayor, go ahead.
That would be appropriate, and also that it should be CC'd to the chair of the region.
Absolutely.
The region are the owners and operators of that facility, and if we want to make changes, it really is going to start there, and the possibility of closing that in due time. So if we can include that, but I'd be pleased to work with staff to come up with a little different focus on that, as well as including what we have in front of us today.
Excellent. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure whose motion it is, but my comment was simply related to the subject matter of this letter. So it says Upper York Sewage Solution. I don't think we need to change the content of the letter. Again, as you said, writing a letter by committee or asking the mayor and staff to rewrite the letter again. So what I think I'll do is, I don't know whose motion it is, but I'll put forward an amendment.
Hasn't been put on the floor yet.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion that we receive the memo and that the subject line be amended to reflect the Holland Landing Lagoon wastewater treatment facility.
Thank you. And I'll just comment that I would appreciate if the comments around the odor could just be brought a little bit more to the front of the letter and state that it is ongoing. It's not just a one-off or twice a year. Just put a little bit more verbiage around the odor. Not seeing any other comments or questions, I'll ask for all in favor of the motion as amended. Oh. Sorry? I didn't see any questions. Was there any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll ask again. All in favor of the motion as amended? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And that, I believe, is all that we have from Community Infrastructure Environmental Services. Mr. Molinari, did you have anything else?
Nothing further at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, anything else? Seeing none, I'll pass the chair back. Oh, sorry. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was something that I noticed a couple of days ago, and I didn't have a chance to message staff. There are electronic signs at the moment on Green Lane announcing that Leslie will be closed from Second Concession to Leslie on Friday at 9 p.m. until Sunday at 9 a.m. That could make for some fun times on Saturday, given that Green Lane is a major artery for our community, and I think they're doing some track repairs at the Metro. I think it's Metrolinx that's doing it. I had trouble finding information on York Region's website. Yes, there are electronic signs, but I don't know if they're at Morel or if our residents who are in Sharon Village or even people who would be using Green Lane on Saturday would be aware of that. So I think we should probably put some messaging out through our own channels. And I just wanted to bring it up under this area since it relates to roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Molinari, did you have a response, or I think that makes sense? Okay, we're going to throw it back to the mayor.
Thank you. Only response is that the message came from me through the region, and it's the region that has been notified, and so we have already dealt somewhat with our communications department. I think there are several of us already starting to put it out on our Facebook and a variety of other items. It is emergency work. It wasn't previously planned. It is an emergency that they felt was necessary from 9 on Friday until 9 on Sunday. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, wow, we're going to be a busy community. It's Metrolinx. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get that out on through communications. Do we know what the detour route would be? Anybody?
They did not have a listing for a detour route. It was simply the facts of that it would be closed. There was nothing further to follow. So I suspect that there isn't a detour route. And as long as they get it out well in advance, we'll still have a lot of people who expect to use that road on every weekend.
Wow. Okay. Get your shopping done before the weekend. Thank you. I think that is all. If no other comments or questions from committee, I'll put the chair back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're under Development Services with Councillor Crone in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 5 items on the agenda today, so I hope everyone packed their lunches. First item is Planning Branch Report, Site Plan Application for Model Home by Birch Bark Homes at 368 Silk Twist Drive. Mr. Ramuno, do you have any comments on this?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Chair. This is simply a site plan approval for a model home for the Wingfoot subdivision in East Holland Landing. They're going to use the model home as a sales office for their future phase build-out.
Thank you. Could I have a mover for this motion, please? Councillor Persechini. Okay, are there any questions from committee? Mayor Hackson.
Thank you. This was interesting to have our model home in front of us, but I'm just wondering why it's coming to council. I'm not sure that we have seen these before. Is there something new, or is it, I just thought it could be streamlined a little bit rather than be on our agenda.
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now, it's a good point, Madam Mayor, and it's something that we're looking into. Our CBO is preparing a model home development agreement. So once we have that in place, we could then avoid having to take these site plans for model homes through to committee and council.
Madam Mayor.
Not that I mind seeing them. I think it's very nice, and it gives us an idea of what we should be expecting in a new subdivision. You never know when you have a different developer in, but I think our time could be spent for staff as much better.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Foster.
Mr. Ramuno, is this house already there? There's already 2 model homes on that corner. I'm wondering if this is a third one, and if not, if this building's already built, then we're a little behind the 8 ball here, I think.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, this is, there are a number of homes being built there, but this one is not, to my understanding, isn't being built. It requires a site plan agreement in order to allow the permit to be issued.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can I call a vote for this? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, number 2, is the Planning Branch report. Request for removal from the Register of Cultural Heritage Properties at 20541 Woodbine Avenue. Mr. Ramuno, would you like to comment?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is another heritage property on our list that was brought forward to with a request to remove it from the list based on the condition of the existing structure. Our Heritage Advisory Committee dealt with this last month, and the recommendation was to remove the property from the heritage list to allow the demolition and the construction of a new home.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a mover for this? Mr. Persechini. Okay. Any questions from Councillor Roy-DiClemente?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, some of the interior photos show that there might be some beams or the banister or some nice hardwood that could be salvaged. Is there something that we can, is there a clause that we can put into this agreement or something that, and I guess for the other item on our agenda as well, is there something that we can do that requires that these materials be salvaged or saved or repurposed? Reclaimed, thank you.
Mr. Ramuno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. We can certainly go back to the applicant and advise them that if there is anything worth salvaging, that they do secure those prior to demolition. So I'll report back. I'll take that back to the Heritage Committee, but also directly to the applicant.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
I think perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, it may be helpful if we had a sort of a standing policy on these sorts of things. If we're going to be removing that there be a mechanism either through our Heritage Advisory Committee with a list of people who collect this stuff, who may even purchase it. You never know, there may be some value retained in that. But that if we were to do something more formal, and I'd be happy to put forward a motion separate from these resolutions to direct staff to have a look at that as part of their heritage work.
Okay.
No. Thank you. No, had we known you were here, we would have, with a request to speak, we would have been able to have you on the agenda. Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Chair, the council's point, it is a good point, and I know our Heritage Advisory Committee and staff, when they do go out to these and do a site visit, they do look at whether, at the overall condition, whether there are any interior finishings that are worth salvaging. But I think moving forward, we'll definitely make a note of that and provide that recommendation within these future reports. That way it's clear that they've undertaken that review, and we can then point out any features that we may want to salvage. But we'll certainly update the reports moving forward.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Councillor Foster.
Just like to mention, sitting with the Heritage Advisory Committee, this topic of salvaging things has come up many, many times. And I appreciate the thoughts around the room. The only thing that I think needs to be strengthened here is that if we're going to try to put together a policy regarding this, it needs to go a lot deeper with where do you store this stuff, who keeps it, who sells it, who does what to it. It could be a very, very long, drawn-out process. I'm not so sure. Again, I like to use the phrase, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Are there other municipalities around that do something along these lines that could certainly help us out with that? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. That was certainly top of mind as we were discussing this for me. I think you raised a good point. If we are to develop a policy, we need to think it out all the way through. Mayor Hackson, I believe you had a comment.
Very, very similar. I do believe that there are some companies out there that actually are salvage for reclaim. And when you take a look at some of these baseboards and the door frames and the kinds of things that some people buy a heritage home and have no idea where they're going to get these features, I think there is someone, but a policy would certainly be helpful, in which case then staff would have the opportunity to investigate in advance what other municipalities might be doing.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Morton, you had a question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is one of the reasons why we have 500 houses on our heritage list, and it's because of the window frames and the fireplaces and the lovely stair. And so we either want to do one and take houses off the list, or we need to carry on the way it is. That's just a comment.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, can I call for a vote? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is passed. All right, moving on to number 3, Development Services Planning Branch Report, request for removal of the Register Cultural Heritage Properties, 21383 Woodbine Avenue. Mr. Ramono, do you have any comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So similar report. This is, again, another request to remove a property on Woodbine, just further north at Holborn Road. Similar situation. The building's in poor condition, and the Heritage Committee is recommending that the property be removed from the list.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Foster. And do we have any questions? Did we ask all our questions for the previous property? Okay, seeing no more questions, can I call for a vote? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Number 4 on our agenda, Building Standards Branch Report, Mandatory Sewage System Maintenance Inspection Program. Mr. Ramuno, could you comment on this, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. This report is really an update for Council with respect to our septic system maintenance inspection program that began beginning of this year. It's been rather successful. I have our CBO here, and I would ask that he can answer any questions if Council has any specific questions related to this report.
Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Persechini? Okay, are there any questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having been here when we were having to discuss this at rather great length and suffering through the paroxysms of the various iterations of what we were trying to do, my understanding was that the inspection was really having the tank pumped and having it inspected at the same time. When I read through the material here, it looks like someone that it's essentially a qualified person, someone with a BCIN or an architect or an engineering certificate has to be on site to inspect. And I'm just wondering what the cost is to a resident to have something like that done. I know that in the past iterations we had challenges because we were going to do the inspection ourselves and charge back residents, and it was a rather expensive proposition. So I'm just wondering if we're simply transferring it to another entity. And I'm just wondering what that cost would be to the homeowner or property owner.
Thank you. It looks like we have someone here at the ready to answer your question. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. Yes, so our preliminary investigation came to a cost of roughly $350. That's what a sewage hauler would charge. Now, you made reference to a BCIN qualified individual. Under the Building Code Act, all sewage haulers have to be BCIN qualified.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you very much. Last on our list is the Building Branch Memo Conditional Building Permit Agreement for two buildings located at 18297 Yonge Street and 18293 Yonge Street with Yonge and Green Lane South Developments Fieldgate properties. Mr. Ramuno, could you comment, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is really an update for council that we have, as of just late last week, have issued two conditional permits for the last phase within the Yonge Green Lane development for the two separate buildings, one being the new Shoppers Drug Mart. So these conditional permits allow the developer to proceed with the site servicing, foundation work, et cetera, in advance of finalizing our site plan agreement. And we're just a couple weeks away from that to allow them to receive their full building permits. But this is good news. They'll be in the ground to start to work on those last two buildings. Hopefully before the end of the year, they will be complete, and that complex will be complete with the Longo scheduled to open this later this summer.
Thank you. I know it'll be nice to have that property completed. It's only been 10 years. Can I have a mover for this motion, please? Mr. Foster. All right. Are there any questions? Mayor Hackson.
Thank you. I know that through you, Mr. Romano, you had talked about the final, and the complete. And I have been here along with a couple others who have had the pain of this one. Does this mean that the traffic flow is going to be improved in that on that quadrant?
To you, Mr. Chair, and I've had a discussion with GM Molinari on this, and the applicant is aware that once they complete this building, they will continue with the monitoring, and they need to also make some improvements to one of the turning circles, the smaller one just to the southeast of the Shoppers. So we're hoping once construction is complete, things should improve. No question, with the opening of the Longos and the Shoppers, there'll be more. It'll be a little busier, two big stores for people to shop at, but the applicant has committed to monitoring the situation and making improvements where needed.
Thank you very much. I just one other observation. We've been through several projects with construction at different times over the period of many years. And it seems like the construction portion poses its own individual problems. And just wondering, now that it is tighter than it has been in the past, do they provide to us any kind of a plan that would indicate some thought in moving large vehicles and in and out, as well as dealing the construction process as well as the general public?
Mr. Ermino? Mr. Molinari?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, typically as part of the site plan process, they'll come in and we'll work out some of those logistics with them to make sure that they're minimizing impact on the overall area. And further to Mr. Ramuno's point on traffic, this site has had many traffic problems, and so we've got I believe we came forward with a report on this in a memo, I believe last year. But essentially, we've got a phased approach. So, if we continue to see problems at particular intersections, there's additional measures that we can do, and we've discussed with the developers. So we're hoping to not have to employ too many of those extra measures, because each time you employ one, it means you're reducing turning movements in specific locations, which makes it more difficult for people to get around the site. So we're hoping that we can minimize future modifications, but so far we believe that what's in place will be effective.
Thank you very much. I know that will come as welcome news to many that we're going to improve the traffic flows in that commercial development. That's certainly a favorite place of mine to shop, so I'll appreciate it. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I call for a vote? All those in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. I believe that is it for me. Back to you, Madam Mayor. Oh, sorry, Mr. Ramuno, do you have any other further comments?
No, nothing further.
All right, back to you.
Thank you very much. We're at item L, and that's legal and council support services with Councillor Foster in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have nothing prepared at this time. Mr. Horner, any comments?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're under item M. And just because you're the last doesn't mean that it's not important to us. You've been very patiently waiting. Under our other business, we have our public library memo and a presentation by our public library board response to the provincial funding cuts to the library service. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Monica Mahachik. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the East Gwillimbury Public Library. In your agenda package, you received a copy of a letter sent by the Library Board to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, the Honourable Minister Thibodeau, regarding the provincial cuts to the Ontario Library Services. This afternoon, I will provide you with a brief overview and update of the provincial library cuts that have impacted your public library and how we've responded. In April, the Ministry announced that the Southern Ontario Library Service, SOLS, and the Ontario Library Services North, OLS North, had their operating budgets cut by 50%. East Gwillimbury Public Library is serviced by SOLS. SOLS was created by the province to create equitable access to library services across the province so communities like ours, smaller communities, have access to the world of resources that are available in Ontario public libraries. Here in EG, we do not have the capacity or the necessity to have the same collection size as our larger urban counterparts. SOLS is funded almost entirely by the province, and they are defined in the Public Libraries Act. This therefore makes them more vulnerable to direct cuts by the province. Municipal libraries like ours, we also operate under the same legislation. However, we are funded primarily through our municipality. So EG provides 99% of our operating budget, and the province provides us with 1%, or approximately $25,000. It should be noted that the operating grant that the province provides the libraries has been frozen at the same levels for over 22 years. SOLS provides key services to library staff and to our customers. The most valuable is the valued interlibrary loan program, a highly subsidized interbranch courier, They provide consortium purchasing for ebooks and digital resources, and they also provide development opportunities for library staff. Upon announcement of the cut, Souls immediately suspended the interlibrary loan program and the interbranch courier. The operational impact of this cut was immediately felt by the library and our customers, as our customers who had interlibrary loan items out had only 2 days to return the items, and they no longer had access to materials across the province. Here in EG, we do have reciprocal borrowing privileges with other libraries in York Region and neighboring municipalities. However, what this means is if a customer, one of our customers, wants to borrow an item, let's say in a western branch in Vaughan, they would have to travel there to pick up the book, travel back, and then vice versa to return the book, rather than being able to, for us to be able to provide it for them at no direct cost or no direct inconvenience. The interlibrary loan program allows us to bring in hard-to-find, out-of-print, multilingual books to our community at no direct cost. We have seniors who have relied on this program to bring in large print titles or paperback titles where they find hardcovers a little bit too hard to hold. We use interlibrary loan for our students in our residence to bring in materials from the Toronto Reference Library to support them in their academic studies. We bring in multilingual books from across the province for our customers whose first language is not English. Here in EG, we do not yet have a multilingual collection. However, we will be launching our first one in October. This is all at no direct cost to our library members or to our community. And this is an example of the value public libraries bring to the community. In April, our interbranch courier was suspended, and as of Friday, it was announced that it is permanently canceled. This year, we will be moving to a private courier, which is at double the cost, and we are looking at various ways we can mitigate this increase and manage this within our operating budget. So the subsidized courier was about $2,000, and we're looking at around $4,000, but we are looking at ways that we can reduce that impact. I do want to note that the fire chief has kindly and generously stepped in, and by laws will be managing our interbranch courier on an interim basis while we establish a contract with a private courier system. And on behalf of the library and the library board, I do want to sincerely thank the fire chief for his team for his support. And in return, library staff will be providing technology training to his units. The library board issued a letter to the minister and is deeply disappointed at the deep cut to a valued and trusted library partner, and people across the province have spoken out regarding this cut. We have seen rather extensive coverage in the CBC, the Toronto Star, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, to name a few. Our own customers have left messages on our social media platforms, and many have also sent letters to the provincial government representatives. There have been some updates, very recent, which still leaves us in a state of uncertainty. As I mentioned, the public outcry was quite large. The minister was releasing a series of statements over the past few weeks. Our partners to the north, OLS North, announced that they would have their interlibrary loan program reinstated as of June 1st. And Souls announced that they would also be reinstating their interlibrary loan program as of June 1st, but it will not be operating under the same model as it was in the past. So previous to the cut, the interlibrary loan program was managed through courier vans, picking up our books, dropping them off to the libraries at no direct cost to public libraries. What Souls is now going to be offering is a postage subsidy to public libraries to be able to mail out items and to bring them in for our customers. Souls is providing $340,000 across the province to libraries as a partial reimbursement. However, there are a lot of unknowns with this subsidy. We know that if here in EG we did receive full payment for all of the items we're bringing in, that still would only be up to 82% of the cost that it would cost us to be able to bring in the loans. We are anticipating probably about half of what we request will be reimbursed. We are buoyed by the news of the reinstatement of the interlibrary loan program. We will be rolling out a modified version of the interlibrary loan program here in EG, and we are very pleased that the ministry has recognized the value of public libraries and the communities that we serve. However, we are very saddened at the reduced capacity of Ontario Library Services, as they did have to reduce their operating staff to be able to offer this operating grant to public libraries. I am certain that there will be more updates to come in the coming months. However, we are very pleased to be able to offer this program back in our community in a modified capacity for the time being. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Monica. I think it touches all of us in the community, and it's much broader than I think the decision makers ever realized. It's very unfortunate. I'm wondering if there is any change to the Library Act, since this is one of them, that the libraries can, is there a possibility now that the libraries can start to do some fundraising and charge for some things that people feel very passionate about and they're quite used to having? Have they lightened that end of the, it's a no?
No, at this time, the government has not changed the Public Libraries Act. So we are still unable to charge for certain service. Interlibrary loan is a bit of a gray area, so we are talking about it in across the industry to see what we can do. Ideally, we do not want to pass this cost on to our customers.
Thank you. Questions? I congratulate you and your staff and board for finding ways of at least trying to recover some of the lost service that our community has enjoyed. I guess we'll just stay tuned and see where it goes from here. I would hope that there's an opportunity to change the act in the respect of some funding that we may be able to directly funnel back into circulation, but I guess time will tell. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment that this is an in-year cut, and so from an operational perspective, Ms. Matchesett's budget is set, and so this, we've found some interim solutions, but I think it sort of puts us on notice for the 2020 budget process that there will be some operating impact to the municipal levy. Thank you.
With that, could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm down to, I will ask if there's any other business at this time. Seeing none, I'm down to an adjournment, and it is at 12:46. Moved by Councillor Foster. All those in favor, and that's carried. And we are back here at 3 o'clock today for our